has since founding Chronos Studios been an active contributor to the visualization subsector of the architecture industry in Nigeria. He earned his Bachelor of Technology in Architecture degree, BTech, from the Federal University of Technology, FUTA, Akure, and a Master of Environmental Design with specialization in architecture from the University of Lagos. He's presently a PhD in architecture candidate at the Texas A&M University. Joining us all the way from Texas, please welcome architect Hassan Anifowose.
Hello, everyone. Mic check. Can you hear me loud and clear?
Yes, we can hear you. We wish you would be louder, but we can hear you. Thank you.
I'm just going to speak louder. I hope that works. Hi, everyone.
Yeah, we can hear you.
Introduction. Awesome, awesome. My name is Hassan. And yeah, funny enough, I'm actually joining from Michigan today. So it's a little bit cold. I'm trying to stay warm and I'm excited to be here. Thank you very much, ATO Architects, for inviting me to the lecture. I'm going to share my screen now. And let's see, can everyone see my screen?
Yes, we can. Can see
Awesome.
your screen.
Okay, so let's barrel on with it. I'll be talking about the theme, which is adapting to the future, and I'll be speaking from some technology side of things, outside design. So I see a couple of my colleagues, some of my ex-bosses. I say hello to everyone. Let's run with it. So here again, just a snippet of who I am, what I do. I am currently working with Swiftwall and Chronos Studios, of course, as founder. And we're running some very interesting research in building information modeling and VR, especially for product manufacturing and training. So, and I also have experience with UX, UI. I work with Virtual Experience Interaction Lab as a UX researcher. And I'm also almost rounding off my PhD now in construction science at Texas A&M University. And I'm working on VR game design titled Interactive Virtual Construction. So here are some of my previous projects from the past, mostly while I was in Lagos. And now today we'll be looking at content regarding first adaptation. We're going to look at the past and the future. And also we will look at questions and opportunities in architecture, engineering, or construction. We're going to also talk about collective intelligence, which usually is an ultimate power. And also we'll talk about VR, AR, and AI, standing for virtual reality, augmented reality, artificial intelligence in architecture, engineering, and construction. And we'll be thinking about the whys, the whats, and the hows. We don't have a lot of time to cover AR and AI today, so I'll talk mostly on what I'm doing on VR. So here is my popular, I call it my popular, quote about the future. And I always think that the future is an opportunity to connect the dots for humanity. We must embrace it to build better living, more productive businesses, and ultimately happier people. Keywords: ultimately happier people. It's as much as we see how everyone is trying to think about what the future is like, one thing is important, and that is we need to make sure that people have better lives, either with the living conditions, the jobs, the businesses. Ultimately, living in great conditions and being happy is something we need to consciously gear our objectives towards, because there are a whole ton of global issues that we don't even want to start talking about. But again, if we start here, we probably may be able to conquer all of those big issues. So let's look at what adaptation is in the past and in the future. So in history, we understand and we fully agree that the two world wars actually changed science and technology. It changed how we saw computers. It changed how we saw phone technologies. There was a lot of inventions surrounding, from the way information was passed across different war fronts and all of that. there has been new research in architecture and construction to meet huge and, really, really huge housing needs, because human population is growing by the day. And also there was extensive, theoretical research about human and machine cybernetics. We've seen different movies. We've seen Terminator, we've seen RoboCop. Just about 2 days ago, I saw someone demoing an exoskeleton on a human practically, and doing all the gestures, and that exoskeleton was responding. And this is something that was really, really interesting. And if you think about how much we can now go into danger zones without being harmed, that is very impressive. So there's a lot of things going on. And COVID-19 has even, just done way more for us than we actually thought. And just like Ekaete introduced earlier on, it changed a lot of things. We're talking about health, we're talking about work and living, we're talking about disaster response. And as we all know, this lecture probably wasn't going to be this format, 2 years ago, but now here we are. And we've basically adapted to a new model of living. We understand that there are new requirements that we have to meet up. And one interesting thing about human beings is that we always adapt. Somehow we always adapt, and it's nature. A lot of people reassess their lives and connections, and people are starting to prioritize living just more than just trying to get some work done or just try to survive. There's been a huge differentiator in disaster response, especially with China. And now we're talking about the metaverse. Facebook is playing a big role in how interactions are going to be in the future. So let's have a quick look at what happened during the COVID response. And China actually assembled a hospital in 10 days. I watched the live stream, for several days, and I saw how this thing was put together. Now we're talking like, this is beyond design. This is beyond, we're not even talking about design in 10 days, because of course that already happened. We're talking about thinking about what could happen, trying to prepare ahead. And I always tell people now that if you have a business plan, you better make sure there's a pandemic response section, because you never know what can happen, right? So China did this, and that was really, really mind-blowing. And let's start to question ourselves that what are the things that actually go behind this? What makes this successful? I can assure you that it's beyond just the lines. It's beyond designing spaces for patients or doctors or machines or robots or anything. It's way beyond design, actually. And in this particular case, robots were delivering medicine and collecting test samples instead of nurses doing that. So we got a rude awakening to say that, look, the world is moving very fast, and now we're going to that interface where humans and robots are actually going to start, interacting. Now, beyond all that you see, there is a ton of stuff that goes on behind the scenes. And usually I split three, everything about a business or any model that works. You have a product or service, you have a process, and then you have people. And there is a ton of things that make all of this work together. There are touch points where, the outside world sees, there are interfaces between the outside world and the inside. There's, cloud synchronization of files and data, everything is live. And of course, a lot of times there's also local storage as backup in case of failures. Then there's a ton of collaboration across disciplines. And when you're collaborating across disciplines, there's always this element that you have to have an idea to an extent of what the next discipline is doing. So that way you can infuse your own professionalism, your discipline, and make the best out of it. There's security, there's encryption, there's data protection, there's outreach. How are we telling people what we're doing? How are we showing what we're doing? I mean, just imagine that the live stream was actually set up just even before the construction started. Who thought about that, right? It wasn't just a response. It was well planned and thought out. And then there was analytics. How did we do? How much did we cover? Where did we fail? What are the responses? What was the perception? what can we do next to make things even better? All of these are things that go beyond just design. So don't expect that this is going to be something about design. It's going to be beyond design. So let's look at questions and opportunities in the AEC sector. And I usually have a ton of questions. I deem myself to be a very curious person. And I have a lot of what ifs and why nots all the time. And sometimes these questions, like I jokingly say, keep me awake at night. Some of the questions we need to start asking basically about our practice, about our businesses, about everything we're doing in architecture, engineering, and construction is, can we fully achieve these things? You know, can we fully digitize projects with building information modeling, for example? Can we have collective intelligence and collaboration with BIM and VR? Can we have reduced safety risks on job sites with building information modeling and more, you know, possibly VR? And again, what is possible? What are the things that are possible for us? Can we efficiently scale businesses? We're getting feedback from someone. Can we efficiently scale businesses, you know, products, processes, and people? And can we gamify training to gain autonomous motivation? How do we get people to want to train? How do we get people to want to learn without having to force them or anything? How do we get that autonomous motivation where people actually want to do what we want them to do? So we're going to get to that point. And again, three major ideas that are disrupting, you know, the construction industry. First is, you know, model-based cost estimation, digital collaboration. And for now, I'm just going to focus on BIM and VR for training and business. Looks like we might have to mute someone. Not sure where the feedback is coming from. So yeah, so let's talk about collective intelligence, which is the ultimate power right now. Lots of people and, you know, lots of disciplines are collaborating. We have the architects and the design team actually on one side. We have the virtual design construction expert or the building information modeling manager on one side. Usually this is the point where I fit right now in the scheme of things. And then we have the trade contractors, which are the people that are going to do the construction. We're talking about the partners, the, you know, the contractors and everything. And usually we found out that, you know, the best way to make sure that we're getting the best output on projects is to make sure that we're live, you know, collaborating. And that goes an immense way to, you know, to determine project outcomes. We've gone way beyond the stage where the architect finishes design and then hands over to another consultant who then hands over to another consultant. Right now, everything goes in right there. And a lot of times the client is actually, you know, well involved in the process of things. It's still pretty difficult, especially for a lot of, you know, upcoming, you know, growing companies and stuff. It's a lot of growing pains, but I can guarantee you that that is the point where everybody needs to start looking towards, where, like, you know, live models are uploaded to BIM 360. I mean, this image is from Autodesk. Class detection happens. Everybody knows where things are going wrong or might go wrong. And all those issues are resolved immediately, even before you hit the ground. So it's almost a perfect build when you start out. That way you can cut out a lot on delays in construction, which is a big, you know, big issue in the industry. So let's look at a quick section, which I'm going to talk about my works in VR in architecture, engineering, and construction, whys and the whats and the hows. So I'm currently developing a virtual construction laboratory, and basically one of the things that we had to do first was to do digital asset development, and digital assets have to be as close to reality as possible in order to enhance perception, in order to enhance realism, in order to enhance actually training outcomes. And this was actually tested out in the research. We needed to have highly editable components. We did a lot of cross software, you know, functionality testing to make sure that all the components are working across almost any software in the industry. And also, we didn't just start developing the product. We stepped back a little bit and we did user persona interviews. Who are the people that are using our product? a lot of times as architects, we design spaces. Sometimes we do case study, we do research on who is going to use the building, but a lot of times many of us still don't. And I believe that it goes a long way in contributing to the success rate of anything you're doing. One of the key findings we had when we talked to the users or the prospective users was we realized that cost was at the bottom of everything they were even considering. Nobody was worried about the money suddenly. And typically we started out to think, oh, the cost was going to be a big deal. So it's important to make sure you're conducting interviews or, do some research on your end users. That usually determines the outcome of a lot of things you're probably trying to develop. So here is just a, screenshot of a prototype scene for the interactive virtual construction scene. We had an area where, users could step in and actually access pre-assembled walls. They go to the next area where they can actually access the components, test them out, feel them out, see the scale in response to their body size, see how they can manipulate objects in virtual space. And then they go to the third stage, which is an assembly training area where they actually have to do the assembly and get scored. So depending on how much time they have to complete the exercise, they get the scores and they see how well they're doing. They want to try again. They want to try much more difficult levels, and then they get feedback. And to an extent, they get trained. And eventually, when they go to a real job site, they don't have to expose themselves to all the safety risks because they have, pre-trained in almost close to reality scenarios. And in this case, this was an airport scenario, which was where the product is mostly being used. So we did some testing. We did some testing on precision. And very interestingly, we were almost able to get the precision to almost a 0.01 precision level, which was very tasking. It was a lot of coding. But again, there's a lot to learn from this. We got very interesting interaction techniques to learn from. And, we were able to strike huge precision and almost achieve a lot of realism, lighting, texturing, baking, and all of that, scaling. And we actually realized that people performed better when the objects were slightly smaller than the real life scale objects. For some reason, we don't know what that reason was yet, but that was an interesting find. So let's talk about the quick results in how we were able to match reality with virtual, matching performance between physical and virtual. And we actually realized that there was a lot of similarities in the performance, timing, especially after we started to optimize the game. We increased the frames per second rate. It was smooth to play. There was no lag. There was no hardware inference. And we also realized that being able to do all of this in VR actually cuts down a lot on having to prepare physical training materials. We saved on a lot of carbon footprint and cost. And also, this basically gave us grounds to work on a commercialized version where people can actually pay out on a subscription plan or any kind of payments and get trained to carry this product. So here is the takeaway from my presentation today. It's important that professionals in the architecture, engineering, construction industry actually have a lot of self-development and adaptation to career opportunities. It's going way beyond design. Everything doesn't end at design nowadays. A lot of things are changing. So people always, it's advisable that people don't get very stuck in the mindset that, oh, I have to be able to design a 50-floor building. No. Sometimes you might have something else to offer as an architect and still be on that 50-floor building team, really. So make sure you're developing yourself, learn as wide as you can. And also for businesses, I would suggest to businesses to train their employees in BIM to unlock better potentials. There are people with absolutely immense potentials, but actually building information modeling forms groundwork where a lot of things can spring up from. And also, this will also go to businesses and individuals. Try to establish automation in your day-to-day tasks. Cloud share, synchronize files. It could be a lot to start with, but I can tell you automation is going to save you a lot of things. Just imagine if you are able to automate 50 emails in a month. Imagine how much time it saves you from having to type an email. So think about how you can do all of these things, and that way you can save up a lot of time on doing the things that you really want to do and pushing the frontiers that you really want to push. This is going to be the end of my presentation. I hope I was right on time. Thank you so much for the opportunity, and I'll be happy to take questions later.
Thank you very much, Hassan. This was really interesting and very, very informative. I think one of the things in the past, people thought technology in architecture was more for the geeks, you know, people who were not so interested in design, but more interested in how the computer works, or how, you know, to do BIM, or how to do the techie things, you know. But more and more we're finding that technology is like air for everything that we do. COVID-19, for example, has taught us as an office, as a firm, and as an organization, you know, that we needed to collaborate more. Some of the things that we talked about before, pre-2020, we talked about moving our information into the cloud. We talked about, you know, collaborating between our various offices, because we have offices in different parts of Nigeria. You know, we were forced by the pandemic to actually make that a reality. And we found situations where we have design teams comprising people in different locations, you know, and being able to leverage on the abilities or the strengths and capabilities of one person in one office to collaborate with somebody in another office, and that was really important. Something that struck me as well was using BIM to sort of test run ideas, you know, trial, does it work? You know, is it going to work? It's less expensive than finding out on site, you know, and that's a mistake a lot of people are making. Some people are not investing in this software because they think it's expensive. I think it's more expensive to make the mistake on site. And so it's more, we should be thinking about things like that. And then most importantly, the interviews, you know, talking with your end users, finding out what's important to them, in a way democratizing the design process. So yes, design is very important, but right now skills beyond design are required to be effective, to be effectual, and to adapt to the future, because you can design something that is stuck in today and it doesn't mean anything